You have been taught to fear your own sadness. When emotional heaviness arrives, you push it away, distract yourself, or judge yourself for weakness. This resistance is not protecting you. It is deepening the very suffering you wish to escape. There is a reason why sadness lingers longer now than it did in your younger years, and there is a reason why wisdom traditions have studied this pattern for thousands of years. Today, I will show you the difference between pain and suffering, and how understanding this distinction changes everything about how you experience difficult emotions. I am Monk Jin, and today we discuss something that touches every human heart at some point in life: the feeling of being emotionally low. You may know this state by different names. Perhaps you call it sadness, heaviness, or simply feeling down. Regardless of the word you choose, the experience itself is unmistakable. It arrives like a fog that settles over your day, dimming colors that once seemed bright and making familiar tasks feel impossibly distant. I want you to understand something clearly from the beginning. This emotional weight is not evidence of weakness. It is not a sign that you have failed or that something fundamental is broken within you. It is a shared human experience, one that has touched every person who has ever lived long enough to accumulate memories, responsibilities, and hopes. In adulthood, especially as we move beyond our 40th year, these feelings often arrive quietly. They do not announce themselves with dramatic events. Instead, they accumulate through years of small disappointments, through the gradual recognition that certain doors have closed, through the fatigue of carrying responsibilities that never seem to lighten. You wake one morning and realize that the heaviness has been building for longer than you noticed. My purpose in speaking with you today is to create a space where this emotional reality can be examined without judgment. We will not pretend it away, nor will we drown it in false optimism. Instead, we will look at it clearly, understanding both why it arises and how we might meet it with wisdom rather than fear. This conversation begins with a simple act of recognition. You are feeling this weight, and that feeling deserves to be acknowledged with honesty and care. As life unfolds beyond our younger years, something changes in how we experience emotional difficulty. When you were 20, sadness might have felt sharp but temporary, like a storm that passed quickly. Now in your 40s, 50s, or beyond, emotional lows often feel different. They settle deeper and linger longer. This is not imagination. There are concrete reasons why emotional vulnerability intensifies as we accumulate years of living. First, consider the simple mathematics of responsibility. You likely carry more weight now than you did 2 decades ago. Perhaps you support a family, manage a career that demands constant attention, care for aging parents, or navigate the complex terrain of relationships that have grown intricate over time. Each responsibility, while meaningful, adds pressure to your daily existence. Second, you have experienced loss. Not everyone loses the same things, but everyone loses something. Opportunities that will not return. People who have departed. Dreams that have been revised or abandoned. The accumulation of these losses creates a kind of emotional scar tissue that makes the heart more tender to new pain. Third, there is the weight of unfulfilled expectations. You imagined your life would look a certain way by now. Perhaps it does not. This gap between vision and reality creates a particular kind of suffering that Buddhist teaching calls attachment to outcomes. Psychologically, research shows that as we age, we also become more prone to rumination, the tendency to replay painful thoughts repeatedly. This mental habit transforms natural sadness into prolonged emotional distress. Understanding these factors helps you see that feeling down is not random. It is shaped by how your mind has learned to hold experience over time. Now we arrive at a crucial distinction that Buddhism illuminates with particular clarity. There is a difference between pain and suffering, and understanding this difference changes everything. Pain is the natural emotional response to difficulty. When something sad happens, you feel sad. When you experience loss, you feel grief. This is pain, and it is unavoidable in a human life. It is part of the honest transaction of being alive and caring about things. Suffering, however, is something additional. Suffering is what the mind creates through its reaction to pain. It is the layer of story, judgment, and resistance that wraps around the original feeling and magnifies it. Let me show you how this works. You feel sad one morning. That is pain, simple, direct, temporary. But then your mind begins its work. It asks why you are sad. It tells you that you should not feel this way. It compares you to others who seem happier. It projects this feeling into the future, convincing you that sadness will never end. It searches your past for evidence that you have always been this way. Suddenly, what began as a natural emotional wave has become a storm of suffering, created almost entirely by thought. The original pain may last an hour. The suffering created by mental resistance and rumination can last for days, weeks, or years. This is the mechanism that turns momentary difficulty into chronic emotional distress. The liberating insight here is simple but profound. If the mind creates this extra suffering, then the mind can also stop creating it. The path forward is not about eliminating sadness. That would be impossible and inhuman. The path is about learning to meet sadness without adding layers of story, judgment, and resistance that transform it into something far heavier. If this reflects where you are right now, write in the comments, "I am learning to be gentle with my mind." Buddhism offers a perspective on emotional states that modern psychology increasingly validates. Nothing lasts forever. This includes the feeling of being down. I understand that when you are inside emotional heaviness, it feels permanent. Your mind tells you that this is simply who you are now, that the sadness has become a fixed feature of your existence. But this perception, however convincing it feels in the moment, is not accurate. Every emotional state is temporary by nature. Feelings arise, reach a peak, and naturally dissolve if we allow them to follow their course. Sadness is like weather moving through an open sky. When we tighten around it, trying to hold it away or push it out, we create the conditions for it to linger. When we simply observe it with awareness, it moves through more quickly. Psychological research on emotional duration supports this Buddhist insight. Studies show that emotions, when allowed their natural expression without rumination or suppression, typically last between 30 seconds and several minutes. What extends emotional states into hours or days is the mind's interference, the stories we tell about the feeling, the judgments we make, the fear that it will never end. Understanding impermanence offers a particular kind of medicine for emotional pain. It does not promise that you will feel happy immediately. Instead, it offers something more reliable, the certainty that what you feel now will change. This is not optimism. It is observation of how reality actually functions. Even your deepest sadness contains within it the seeds of its own dissolution. This perspective creates space inside emotional difficulty. It reminds you that you are not trapped, even when it feels that way. The heaviness you carry today will lighten, perhaps not instantly, but inevitably. There is a paradox at the heart of emotional healing that often surprises people when they first encounter it. The more you resist an unwanted feeling, the stronger that feeling becomes. This seems counterintuitive. Logic suggests that if you push something away with enough force, it should disappear. But emotions do not follow this logic. They follow a different law entirely. When you feel sadness beginning to rise and immediately tell yourself, "I should not feel this way," or "I need to be stronger than this," you create internal conflict. Part of you is experiencing sadness, while another part is fighting against it. This division requires enormous energy. More importantly, it focuses intense attention on the very feeling you wish to escape. Attention is like fuel for emotional states. Whatever you resist, you are actually strengthening through the force of your focused awareness. Buddhist psychology recognized this pattern thousands of years ago, and modern therapeutic approaches have now confirmed it. Research in acceptance-based therapies shows that emotional avoidance intensifies distress, while acceptance reduces it. This does not mean you must like feeling sad. Acceptance is not approval. It is simply the willingness to let an emotion be present without immediately trying to change it, fix it, or make it disappear. When you allow sadness to exist without resistance, something remarkable happens. The emotion loses its grip. It becomes just a feeling moving through you, rather than an enemy you must fight. This shift from resistance to acceptance typically shortens the duration of emotional pain significantly. The sadness that might have lasted days when you fought it may pass in hours when you simply let it be. This is not resignation or passivity. It is a more intelligent way of relating to your inner experience, one that respects the natural rhythm of emotional life, rather than trying to force it into patterns it was never meant to follow. Now we turn to the practical tool that makes everything I have described possible: awareness. When I speak of awareness, I am not referring to something mystical or abstract. I mean the simple capacity to observe your own thoughts and feelings without being completely absorbed by them. This is a skill you already possess, though you may not have cultivated it deliberately. Think of a moment when you noticed yourself feeling angry and thought, "I am becoming angry right now." In that instant of recognition, you were not entirely inside the anger. There was a part of you watching it, aware of it. This observing presence is what we call awareness, and it creates a crucial distance between you and your emotional experience. When you feel down, awareness allows you to notice the thoughts that accompany the feeling. You observe yourself thinking, "This will never change," or "I am not strong enough to handle this." Once you see these thoughts as thoughts rather than truth, they lose some of their power. Awareness also allows you to notice physical sensations, the heaviness in your chest, the tension in your shoulders, the fatigue in your limbs. When you observe these sensations with curiosity rather than judgment, they become less overwhelming. Here is what many people discover with practice: calm can exist alongside sadness. You can feel sad and simultaneously feel a deeper stillness beneath the sadness. This stillness does not erase the sadness, but it holds it with more space and compassion. Awareness is not about controlling emotions or forcing them to change. It is about creating a relationship with your inner life that is less reactive and more spacious. This relationship transforms emotional overwhelm into something manageable. You begin to see that feelings are experiences passing through you, not definitions of who you are. This shift, practiced consistently, becomes the foundation of genuine emotional resilience. Over time, something unexpected happens when you meet emotional pain with awareness rather than resistance. The suffering that once felt like your enemy becomes your teacher. I have observed this transformation in many lives, including my own. Each time you sit with sadness without running from it, you learn something about the nature of your mind. You discover how thoughts create stories. You recognize patterns of fear and self-judgment. You see how your attention shapes your experience. These insights accumulate into wisdom, not intellectual knowledge, but lived understanding that changes how you move through the world. There is a strength that develops through this process, but it is not the strength of hardness or invulnerability. It is the strength of flexibility, of being able to bend without breaking. You become someone who can hold difficult emotions without being destroyed by them. This capacity builds quiet confidence. You know from direct experience that you can survive sadness, that you can sit with discomfort, that you can meet your own darkness with compassion. This knowing does not prevent future pain. Life will continue to bring challenges, but it changes your relationship to pain fundamentally. You no longer fear your own feelings in the same way. Buddhist teaching often speaks of emotional pain as a refining fire. What burns away in this fire is not your capacity to feel, but rather the rigid stories about yourself that cause unnecessary suffering. You begin to see yourself more clearly, with less distortion from fear and fantasy. You develop what we might call emotional honesty, the ability to acknowledge what is actually happening inside you without exaggeration or denial. This honesty becomes its own kind of peace. You are no longer performing for yourself, pretending to be other than you are. The energy that once went into maintaining false images becomes available for genuine living. Share in the comments one emotional habit or realization from this section that feels true for you. Understanding provides a foundation, but at some point you must ask the practical question: what do I actually do when emotional heaviness arrives again? Because it will arrive again. Life guarantees this. So let us talk about specific responses that translate insight into action. First, when you notice sadness beginning, pause. Do not immediately try to fix it or figure out why it is happening. Simply stop whatever you are doing for a moment. This pause interrupts the automatic pattern of resistance that often makes feelings worse. Second, breathe deliberately. Place attention on your breath moving in and out. Count 5 slow breaths, if that helps you focus. This is not about calming yourself through breathing, though that may happen. It is about anchoring your attention in something steady while emotions move through you. Third, name what you feel with simple language. Say silently or aloud, "This is sadness," or "This is heaviness." Naming creates a small space between you and the feeling. It activates the observing part of your mind that we discussed earlier. Fourth, locate the feeling in your body. Where do you feel it most strongly? Your chest, your throat, your stomach? Direct gentle attention to that place without trying to change the sensation. Just let it be there. Fifth, notice the thoughts that accompany the feeling without believing them automatically. When your mind says, "Everything is hopeless," recognize this as a thought produced by a sad state, not an objective assessment of reality. These steps may seem almost too simple to be effective, but their power comes through repetition. You are training your nervous system to respond differently to emotional difficulty. Each time you practice these responses, instead of falling into old patterns of avoidance or rumination, you strengthen new neural pathways. This is how genuine change happens, not through dramatic transformation, but through small, repeated actions that gradually reshape your relationship to your inner life. Emotional stability is not something you find one day and keep forever. It is something you build through consistent daily practice. Think of it like physical health. You do not exercise once and remain fit permanently. You develop habits that maintain fitness over time. The same principle applies to emotional well-being. There are specific practices that protect and strengthen your emotional balance when done regularly. First, establish a daily check-in with yourself. This might take only 2 minutes. Simply ask, "How am I feeling right now?" Notice without judgment. This prevents emotional states from building unnoticed until they become overwhelming. Second, create boundaries around rumination. When you catch yourself replaying the same painful thoughts repeatedly, gently redirect attention to something present and concrete. This might be a task you are doing, a sensation you are feeling, or a sound you are hearing. Third, maintain basic rhythms even when you do not feel like it. Sleep at consistent times. Eat regular meals. Move your body in some way. These physical foundations support emotional stability more than most people realize. When basic routines collapse, emotional fragility increases. Fourth, practice short moments of mindful awareness throughout your day. You do not need long meditation sessions, though those can help. Simply pause for 20 seconds, several times daily, to notice your breath, your surroundings, or your bodily state. These brief moments compound over time into a more continuous awareness. Fifth, reflect before sleeping on one thing you met with patience or kindness that day, even if imperfectly. This builds positive attention without denying difficulties. These practices may seem modest, but they create the conditions in which emotional resilience grows. Stability emerges from repetition, from showing up for yourself consistently, even when progress feels invisible. You are not seeking to eliminate sadness. You are building a foundation strong enough to hold whatever comes. We have traveled together through an examination of emotional heaviness and how to meet it with wisdom. Let me gather the essential threads before we part. Feeling down is a natural part of being human, particularly as we accumulate years and responsibilities. This feeling is not evidence of failure. It is evidence that you are alive and that you care about your existence. The suffering you experience around sadness comes largely from how your mind relates to it. Through resistance, rumination, and stories that extend natural pain into prolonged distress. Understanding the impermanence of all emotional states offers genuine relief. Nothing you feel now will last forever. This is not optimism, but observable truth. Awareness is the primary tool that transforms your relationship with difficult emotions. When you can observe your feelings without being completely absorbed by them, you create space for wisdom and compassion to emerge. This awareness, practiced repeatedly, builds real emotional strength. Not the strength of never feeling pain, but the strength of being able to hold pain without being destroyed by it. The practical steps I have shared are simple but require consistency. Pause when sadness arrives. Breathe. Name what you feel, locate it in your body. Notice thoughts without automatically believing them. These actions, repeated, reshape your nervous system's response to emotional difficulty. Daily habits protect your emotional stability. Regular check-ins, boundaries around rumination, consistent routines, brief moments of mindfulness, and evening reflection all contribute to a foundation that can hold whatever life brings. Remember this above all. Feeling down does not define you. How you meet that feeling, with harshness or kindness, with wisdom or reactivity, that is what shapes your life. you have within you the capacity for tremendous gentleness toward your own suffering. That gentleness, combined with clear seeing, creates the possibility of genuine peace. Not a peace that eliminates all difficulty, but a peace that remains steady even in the midst of challenge. If you are ready to care for your emotional life more wisely, write in the comments, "I choose steady peace."